Today, I'm going to show you a recipe for one soft loaf of bread. This is perfect for sandwiches. This is going to be good. To start, I already have, this is around 3.5 cups of bread flour. It's 450 grams if you are weighing your measurements. I also will be using active dry yeast, 1 full package. It's around 2¼ teaspoons of active dry yeast. Now, if you wanted to double this recipe, you can just still use 1 package of active dry yeast. I just don't want it to go to waste, so it's all going in. Here I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of sugar. You can also sub that with honey. I'm also adding 1½ teaspoons of salt, and I'm putting it off to the side. I don't want the salt to come in contact with the yeast just yet, so I'm just going to mix the flour, yeast, and sugar to one side. And now I'm going to add 4 tablespoons of unsalted butter, and this is softened. You can sub this with 2 tablespoons of cooking oil. I do that all the time, and it totally works. Here I'm going to add hot water. This is 1¼ cups of hot water, and I'm pouring it right over the butter. And with chopsticks, you could also use one of those Dutch whisks. I have one, but I think my son was playing with it, so I don't know where it's at. So I'm just going to use chopsticks to get things started. It will be sticky if you're working with your hands, so use maybe a wooden spoon, but I'm using chopsticks. If you're making this, you'll want to just keep mixing it in the bowl until it forms somewhat of a dough ball. And once it's to this stage, you'll want to just turn it out onto your work surface. And if you get the ratios of ingredients correctly, you won't need to flour your work surface. But if the dough is too sticky or wet, you can sprinkle flour onto the work surface. I'm going to knead this for about 10 to 12 minutes until it forms a soft, round dough ball, kind of smooth on the surface and springs back. Okay, so I've been doing this for 10 minutes. My dough is ready to rest and proof. For the first proof, I'm placing it back into the bowl. And what I'm going to do next is take a tea cloth and sprinkle it with a little bit of flour. And this is what I'm going to cover the bowl with. You could also use cling film, but sprinkling the tea cloth with flour prevents the dough from sticking to the cloth as it proofs. So I'm just going to loosely cover it and place this into my oven with the light on only, and I'm going to let it proof and double in size. The time for that may vary depending on the weather or the temperature of your home or kitchen or where you put it. So at least 1.5 to 2 hours, and see if it has doubled. So for those of you new here, hello. My name's Angelica. Welcome to my channel, Simply Mama Cooks, and be sure to click that bell notification to get all of my latest videos. So it has proofed over the course of 2 hours, and I'm going to remove the tea cloth, and this has definitely doubled in size. This is exactly where I want it. So I am going to lightly flour my work surface, and I'm going to turn the dough out onto the work surface, press the air out of it, and I'm just going to shape it, fold it, shape it, press it into a loaf shape. I wanted to mention this recipe is also great for dinner rolls. So you definitely can make dinner rolls with this recipe. But you will have a different bake time. I would bake these like at 375 over the course of like 25 minutes if they were dinner rolls. You just separate them into dough balls. Quite honestly, it makes at least a dozen small rolls. Okay, so this is the shape that I want, and you'll want to pinch the seam to keep it together. This is not going to be a perfect log shape, and the size of the loaf pan that you can use for this recipe is the 9x5, but I have an 8x5, and so that's what I prefer to use with this recipe. It'll definitely work with a 9x5 loaf pan. It's just going to be a little flatter. It won't be as tall, but it's still good. So I put this into my loaf pan with parchment paper, and I'm going to let this proof once again until it doubles in size. I'm going to cover with a tea cloth, and again, lightly dust it with a little bit of flour, and just let it proof again. It'll take maybe another hour, or it could rise quicker. It just depends on the conditions and temperature of your kitchen. So I am going to preheat the oven to 425 degrees Fahrenheit. You'll want to bring up the temperature of your oven to 425 degrees Fahrenheit. So once my loaf has doubled, it's time to go into the oven. I'm going to carefully remove the cloth. It already smells and looks amazing, by the way. I love the way yeast dough smells. So good. So I'm going to carefully put this into my preheated oven. And I'm trying not to move it too much. I want it to stay fluffy and full of that air. So now I'm going to immediately drop the temp of the oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit and bake for about 30 minutes. So the bread smells amazing. I'm going to take it out. It's been about 30 minutes. So I'm going to place this on a wire rack to cool. And while it's cooling, or before it starts to cool, I am going to spread melted butter over the top of the bread loaf. And this is probably going to be the hardest part, letting this cool after slathering it with softened butter. It smells amazing. Okay, so I'm going to carefully remove it from the pan. It's really easy to lift because I kind of have these parchment paper flaps to use. You can definitely leave it in the bread pan and let it cool there, but this is going to expedite that process because it smells amazing. And once it's completely cooled, you can slice into it. And like I said at the beginning of the video, it's perfect for sandwiches, or the way I like to serve it is with bread and butter, and it makes one perfect loaf. And you'll definitely want to use a sharp knife to slice into this. And again, letting it cool completely makes it a lot easier to get perfect slices. And you can cut them as thick or as thin as you prefer. Sometimes I even slice it thick for Texas toast. It all works. So I'm going to slather some softened butter and I'm going to give it a try. And it's really simple and easy to make. You can sub the sugar for honey and sub the butter in this recipe for cooking oil. It's very versatile. And be sure to check the description below and I will give you the list of ingredients so you can make this for yourself. Time to dig in. So my kitchen smells like a bakery and the texture of this bread is so soft and tender. And it's so easy to make and it's perfect for one loaf. So I hope you give this recipe a try. I hope you like it. And thanks for watching.